A one Canadian economy. It's the goal of Prime Minister Mark Carney, and he's pitching it to the premiers at the First Ministers meeting in Saskatoon today.
We will work with the provinces and territories to build one Canadian economy by removing internal barriers to trade and labour mobility, and identifying and expediting nation-building projects that will connect and transform our country.
All 13 provincial and territorial leaders are set to examine ways to fast-track major infrastructure projects and remove interprovincial trade barriers. There's the premiers and the First Ministers there. The Prime Minister is aiming to pass new legislation soon, by July the 1st. So for a closer look at the ongoing talks, I'm joined this morning by Laura Stone with the Globe and Mail. She's in Saskatoon. Good morning.
Good morning, Anne-Marie.
We've heard Mark Carney mention the one Canadian economy before. What does it mean, and what has been the response from the premiers so far?
Well, what it means is Canada is going to be fast-tracking these so-called nation-building projects. That's going to be a key focus of today's meeting with the premiers. All of these premiers from across the country have submitted their wish lists to Mr. Carney and his government as to what projects they want to see built and fast-tracked in their provinces that they say would benefit the entire nation. We're expecting to hear which ones Mr. Carney has chosen today at the conclusion of the meeting. One Canadian economy simply means that it should be easier for goods, services, people to flow throughout the country. As we've seen, we're facing an existential threat from the United States, and Canada is looking for a way to diversify its economy away from the U.S., but particularly strengthen that right here at home. And so allow trade to flow easier between the provinces. Billions of dollars are at stake. And we saw yesterday here in Saskatoon, Ontario announced agreements with Saskatchewan, Alberta, and PEI to boost internal trade. So really the focus is getting Canada moving, getting Canada's resources developed. Which ones Mr. Carney's government has chosen, we'll find out later today. But there is some tensions with the West in terms of which projects should be chosen. We've seen, of course, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith push an oil pipeline and calling for the repeal of several policies that she says are an impediment to resource development in Canada. So lots to discuss, but I think there's kind of a cautious optimism among the premiers that Canada is serious about kind of unlocking trade within our own country.
It's interesting to be using this language in this time about nation-building projects, because you think of things like the railway, for example. I sort of feel like that's the last time we were talking about these these projects that go across the country. Listen, Laura, you have covered both federal and provincial politics, so you know that the stalemate is often who's going to pay to get things started and pay to maintain them. So which issues fall under whose jurisdiction is also, a sticking point often. What is the PMO offering to get these projects that he decides on going and maintained?
It's a very good point, because we haven't heard a lot about federal funding, right? We've heard a lot about federal support, about ways to fast track these provinces. Some of the provinces, though, I think Quebec is a key one, is going to come forward with their projects and say, look, we need federal funding in order to get this through. So there are several asks on the table. Whether the government is willing to put up the funding after today, we'll see. I think it's more about, the meeting is more about the ability of Canada to approve permits within 2 years to get these projects going and to kind of get over the stalling that we've seen on several of these key resource development projects. So funding will certainly be a question, I think, that will come up during the closing press conference later this afternoon.
Carney's leadership is being characterized sort of as this CEO PM, this idea of deputizing his leaders. You got to hit certain targets that are outlined from the top. And we know that works effectively in the private sector, but in government, process matters. So what kind of challenges could the Prime Minister face trying to get these projects off the ground?
Well, there is a lot of collaboration and consultation that has to take place in Canada, particularly among First Nations. We've seen lots of controversy happening both in British Columbia and in Ontario right now over plans to fast-track development in those provinces. And a lot of First Nations leaders are saying, look, you have not properly consulted us. We want to be part of the discussions. We want to be part of the way these projects are developed. And so there's a duty to consult. There's a constitutional duty in Canada to consult. And we've heard from Mr. Carney that he is going to abide by this, obviously, and bring First Nations leaders in. There was a reception here last night in Saskatoon where several First Nation leaders were in attendance, mingling with politicians such as Dominic LeBlanc, Chrystia Freeland, and the Prime Minister, and all of these premiers. And so, there is pressure from both this idea that Mr. Carney has to fast-track these projects, get things done, but he also has to speak to a variety of stakeholders within Canada. And so I think that's going to be a very tricky balancing act for him as he seeks to get these projects approved and off the ground.
Laura, I'm going to sneak in a question really quick because I want to ask you about something new that's happened. Carney has selected former UN Ambassador Marc-André Blanchard as his chief of staff. It's a highly influential position. Why was he chosen?
Well, look, first of all, Mr. Carney needed an actual full-time chief of staff, not someone semi-permanent, which is what he had heading into the summer. I think this is, again, Anne-Marie, a nod to the business community. Mr. Blanchard has a lot of business experience as well, particularly in Quebec. He has a lot of experience on the world stage. I think, it's a sign, a nod to the fact that Mr. Carney is trying to run the government in a very business-like and serious manner. I think there's lots of praise for this decision, and people believe it sends a good signal that Mr. Carney is taking the business of governing very seriously. And so, it was kind of an adult choice, I believe. And this is someone that Mr. Carney had been courting to take on the position to leave the private sector. And so I would say kind of widespread praise and optimism in this choice for chief of staff.
Lots for you to follow today from Saskatoon this morning. Thanks for making time for us, Laura.
Thank you so much.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.